What's next for IT? In today's economy, technology touches every aspect of the day-to-day operations of business. There has never been more pressure on IT to deliver for our organizations. So what can we expect over the next decade? We need to think differently about how we approach our work to continue to thrive into the future. This requires all of us to be intentional in how we look at our role going forward. Smart IT is an approach to getting the important things done by transforming the way we think, work, and lead. And now, let's disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk the smart IT way.
Oh, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. And today, I'm happy to welcome Eknauth to the show. Hey, man, good morning. How's it going?
Hey, morning. How are you?
Pretty good. And you got to test my pronunciation, man. Did I get it right?
Absolutely. I was about to start. My opening salvo is typically how to say my name. So it's Eknauth, like no pain. So if you did not work out this morning, you ache not.
Oh, I love it. Eknauth. And that's when people see the EK, they're thinking ek, not ache.
Exactly. Right. The name is kind of like a Monty Python joke, right? So now for something completely different. And there's my name. So I usually, some people say, how do you pronounce it? And then they try to look at the spelling. And I'm like, that's totally not going to help.
Okay, that's the first part. And then the Nauth, you're just thinking not almost.
Correct. Not. N-O-T. That's right.
I love it,
Random
man.
letters, thanks to the British. My family's from the British West Indies, Guyana. And, they have a fascination for extra letters and all sorts of words. So, random U's and things like that. So I will blame the Brits for this.
Okay. That's cool, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate your time today. We met maybe 7, 8 years ago. I'm trying to remember the time frame.
It was quite a while ago. And I think you were in the enterprise side of things, which is kind of how we connected a long time ago. And so we were, I can't remember what computing platform it was, but it's been a minute. So,
and I think I came and visited your office, maybe.
You did. You came to lovely Arlington, Texas. So we were there. We're, I don't know if you were in the building. We bought our office building back in 2016. So we are basically less than 2 miles from the Cowboys Stadium. So it's kind of fun. We can kind of park there and then walk over and see a game. So it's sometimes sadder to go see a Cowboys game than it is to see a Rangers game. So it's
nice. And of course, you go, I guess, every once in a while, I go visit headquarters. I love the Frisco area. It's so nice.
Yes. Yeah, it's greatness. Yeah, so here I'm right next to White Rock Lake. So it's in Dallas. It's called Lakewood. It's a little town here, but it's just outside the downtown. But the great thing is there's a lake you can kind of, if you like to jog or ride bikes, it's perfect for that. So I'm not a cyclist. I'm more of a walker / sometimes runner if I'm ambitious. And the lake is it's terrific for that.
We got to take care of those knees, man. As we all get a little bit older, you start to get up in the morning and say, hold on, what's going on with my knees here?
Right.
Gotta run a little bit. You know what? A fast-paced walk will do.
It will do. And, this is why we ache a lot, not just ache not. So all that cardio, that'll do it to you.
There you go. Well, I wanted to bring you on the show because you're in a fantastic field here, right? So everything the IT leaders and their teams do for their businesses revolve around code. Everything that we see on our devices, our computers, front end, back ends, everything around artificial intelligence, developers sitting down there and coding, instructing machines what to do, drives the entire global economy. So I say, you know what, let's go ahead and get like a little state of the land from you. I know you got a company out there that helps companies figure out how to make their systems work at the actual coding level, which is always fascinating. Most of the population consumes what software does for them. It's always good to go behind the scenes and take a look at the developers and see what's going on in that landscape, right? Who's coding? How the coding changing? what's the effect of automation and AI is having on the development life cycle, implications for developing code faster and these longer, more complex supply chains, whereas, you can have 6, 7, 8, 9 different third parties, and they each have their codes and their development cycles connected through APIs. So it's getting very, very complex out there. So I guess we'll just start kind of in general, get your kind of 360-degree overview of like what's the state of like software development in 2025.
Right. I'll tell you, this is a lot of excitement. So, I've been around since the start of the whole internet era, right? So like there was a lot of excitement back in the day where you could like do stuff on HTML, you could do stuff on the web. Everyone was super excited because it was like all brand new and different things, right? And so I haven't seen that level of excitement since the advent of AI and really becoming popularized with with these large language models like ChatGPT and things like that. Now obviously the math behind artificial intelligence, machine learning, things like that, that whole family's been around forever, right? That math has been there, but now that there are tools that are kind of entering into business, I think that there's a whole surge of excitement behind technology. So I kind of take that. So just kind of taking a step back, right? I look at the landscape as actually being one targeted for kind of operations leaders, right? So if you're, think of yourself as kind of, a leader at an organization, you might have a formal title, you might have an informal title, but you've got visibility on what your company does, how it does it. And, you've always got this kind of nagging sense that you're at risk of something, right? You're at risk of something going obsolete. You're at risk of something breaking. Maybe people just don't have visibility into what each of the different groups are doing, right? So there's sort of a disconnect, and you're not working. You're not working optimally, right? So I think from the business side, that is where the most excitement actually is, because now people are starting to think about, what is my intent? What am I trying to do? What's my higher purpose? And so I go back to, the kind of the model for building software in my head is it begins with commander's intent. And, I actually, the first time I heard that term, I was in the Marine Corps, and it really struck me because it put to words a concept that I've always felt strongly about, that when people are trying to do something, whether it's with technology or anything else, when people are trying to do something, there's always a reason behind it. There's a higher purpose. And it's very difficult to express it, to convey it. And so one of the first steps that I think that's essential to do is figuring out what is someone's higher purpose. How do we discern commander's intent? And there's a process for it, right? There's a series of questions that you can ask, and there's like a thought process you could take people down. But to me, that is the most important first step. And so when I look at the model of delivering software, so if you look at any company that delivers software, first step is discerning commander's intent. Then the next step is obviously to construct it in accordance to whatever you recognize and discern what is needed, not what they simply ask for. And then after you've constructed it, then it's about managing or maintaining it, right? And so that so-called DCM model, that discern, construct, and manage, to me, that's like the fundamental services delivery model. So if we're going to be in this business, start with that, start with discerning. Then now here's the fun part. You mentioned AI, you mentioned automation. You hear about things like low code, no code platforms. So just imagine the cost of constructing software approaches zero. And I know it's never going to be zero. It's never going to be free to build or make software. But just pretend the cost to construct is zero. So what are you left with? You're left with your ability to discern, to understand commander's intent, what you're building, why you're building it, what that would look like. That's what your initial focus is. Then you construct it, and let's say you use AI or some sort of vibe coding, right? And then you get this thing, prototype built out pretty quickly. And then the final part is, so now you roll this into production, you roll it into your enterprise, into your business. You've got to manage it, right? And manage
Yeah,
could be
huge.
everything from, compliance and security to, just ongoing enhancements, really supporting your end users and really trying to find new ways to drive additional value into the business. So if you have some insight, for example, on their financials, cost accounting, any of their metrics that they use to evaluate performance of the business, you can continue looking at those and saying, okay, my management goal is to improve the business. And so to me, that DCM model is what's really changed is the DCM model, this whole discern, construct, and manage. It remains the same. It's in a certain way, it's always been there.
Yeah.
The main difference today is the cost to construct is being reduced. And what that does is it puts that focus back on discernment. And now you don't have a bunch of developers who use complex words.
Yeah.
And I think at times they sort of distort the original intent, because all code is, as you referenced, is just a series of decisions and instructions that you give, computers to carry out. But imagine if I was a little bit off track in the first decision, and then in the second instruction, I was slightly off track. These errors, they're not linear. It's not just 1 + 1 is 2, right? They compound, they're exponential, they're interrelated. And so what happens is your deviation from what you discerned is magnifying and it's compounding. And just because I can do things for free, I can build software for free, it costs me $0 to construct. All that means is that I will more rapidly come up with something really bad.
Yes.
So I think that, so to me, this is the fun part about our industry right now, is that use the AI, use the technology, get started. You're really doing it to suss out the higher purpose that business leaders struggled to articulate.
Yeah,
and now this becomes a much more human-centric field than it has been in a very long time. It does not become dominated by software developers who want to out-technicalize you, make you feel a little dumb, make you feel like they're super smart and they know what they're doing. But in reality, maybe they know some syntax, they know some commands, they know all these complex layers and everything that develops in technology. But if that evaporated, their power in a way diminishes. And what I mean by the power is really, that risk of corrupting the initial vision, that intent that you began with.
You said something very interesting, which I always love to hear, that the human and the center portion. Because in reality, if all this software and technology is so fantastic, you'd almost think the end user would say, you know what, it's getting easier and easier year over year to get my job done. And in a lot of cases, that's not happening. It's even more complex to get a simple task done, either from your customer interfacing with your business, or in the back end, your business, the workers and the workflows. They see a lot of friction in the technology. So I think that's kind of where we need to go here, to make sure we're focusing on how are humans actually interfacing. So if the intent is to have your user come in and interface in a certain way to, I don't know, open up a mortgage, you would think your coding, your development cycle, your technology is going to make that process even easier. So maybe the business want to make it even easier for you to open up that, apply for a mortgage, get approved, get to monitor that whole process faster. And if you just ask the customer, like, is the process easier? And if they say no, it's like, that's interesting feedback, because we thought the technology was cool, right? So why isn't this matching up with the user experience? So let's talk about this, because I know you probably experience this every day, right? You go to different websites, you use different mobile apps, you interface with a lot of businesses every single day. And sometimes you just feel that friction, like, this is kind of hard or confusing, or this technology isn't making this experience easier for me.
Right. And it's funny because, let me say this. The best technology is anything that enhances human relationships. That is the best technology. So let me give you a kind of a goofy example. We're out in Miami. We're involved in kind of investment with a company that does recovery room, right? And so we're going to be building kind of the recovery room software. So if you have plastic surgery and you need to kind of recover after your procedures, you need to stay somewhere, and then you need a whole raft of just different nurses and specialists to go ahead and render care to, right? So, our software would be, booking the rooms and scheduling the services, and then doing things like monitoring, outcomes tracking, right? Like, how is the patient doing? How are they improving? What do they fit in with the rest of the population to make sure that they're getting better faster, or they're within a standard deviation of that healing process, that recovery process. So anyway, we're in Miami. We go to this restaurant, and it's a fantastic restaurant, but they had these you would order your food and drinks from a kiosk. And so it was this little, almost like an iPad, but you like type in these things, and it was like a beating to order it. So when you sit down there, the person says, "Hey, I'm going to be taking care of you tonight. Here's your tapper." I'm like, are you really taking care of it? And they have to give you instruction on how to use it. You can't customize certain things, and they have to come over and help you do it. Some things they say, "Okay, I'll have to tell me what you want, and I'll go back to the kitchen because I can't even type it in to the software." So all along the way, you're kind of annoyed, basically, as a consumer. And this is the same thing, I think, when you try to put too much technology in there. Really, the higher purpose of kind of going into that restaurant, having that experience with the server, is a good server will really give you a good experience, understand, what your family is there for, why you're there, be able to suggest certain things to you, and then do upsells, things like that, right? That is what a good person does. And technology technology was the friction.
Yeah.
And that's the part that people aren't, and that goes back to the higher purpose of it, right? The higher purpose is understanding what they're for. So let me go pick on grocery stores. This is like like, to me, I complain about this a lot. Go to Walmart, right? For a while, it was like self-check, right? They're like getting rid of all their cashiers. And I'm like, I can kind of understand it. They want to save a couple of bucks, get rid of some people, whatever, right? Then, now, of course, like there's a theft problem happening, right? So, so they're starting to bring them back. But here's my argument. I would say, let's reimagine the position of a cashier. Let's give it a new title so people don't get confused as to what that person is. But that person really is there to, when you check out, there's like all these items on the so-called end cap or whatever, right? By gum, magazines, whatever, right? Those sort of add-ons are there to kind of inspire customers at the last minute to just throw it onto the conveyor belt, make a purchase. So I would say if we reimagine the cashier position as a human role, where maybe you've got a lot more automation involved, maybe you could even do some of the things that like Amazon did, where they were kind of using cameras to figure out what people were buying. So you lay it out with the belt, figure it out, and then the person that's there, their new role is to sell you something. So when I worked at McDonald's, we went through this whole training back in late 80s when I worked at McDonald's in high school. And the whole thing was, would you like fries with that?
Yeah.
That was one of the best campaigns. And so they went through all of this training. They taught all of the people like me who sat at the register to teach people, would you like, fries with that? Or what would you like to drink? Or whether they ordered a drink or fries or anything like that. It was a very successful campaign because even if a fraction of your customers, let's say 1 in 10, 1 in 4, said, yeah, I'll take that. Your sales, it will pay for itself, right? That position pays for itself with just a few more sales of, hot apple pie or something like that. Clearly it's getting close to lunch. So, talk about but to me, that's what the so-called cashier position would be, at Walmart. You're reimagining it. You're improving the human to human experience because the technology is now running a little bit more in the background. You're using cameras to discern what people are buying just as much as Amazon did when they shut down their trial program of people walking into a store and then you just grab things. I don't know if you remember this, but people would just grab, it was like a special Amazon store. You just grab a few things and throw it in your cart and leave, and you wouldn't have to go through like a checkout process. So the technology was sophisticated enough to figure out what you had. So my argument would be if you really focus on human relationships, human interaction, that human experience, things we'll get that's the value of technology. It's transparent. It falls in the background. And if it's there, you're just relying on it to do even like what we're doing right now is kind of fun, right? Like think of it, 20 years ago, that this would have been a dream to be able to kind of get online and be able to do this. And now we've incorporated, with COVID and everything else, we've all kind of figured out how to get online. Sometimes we use it as like a first step. It's like first date, our first date, we're going to do it online. And, we'll see how that goes. Right. And then maybe if we're in the same city or maybe it's worth it, we'll get on a plane and fly and spend time together. But there is a way now that we can actually improve a little bit more how we interact versus the old conference calls when, someone's on mute, you never know what the other person really is thinking at the time.
Yeah.
They tell you everything's fine. It's not fine. That just a one word answers don't work. But when you see someone or spend a little bit more time with them, whether the software you built is it really fine or are you just saying that? Right? Because I can tell you this. I know if I come home and I ask my wife how she's doing and she says, fine, I kind of know what that means.
Yes.
But on a conference call, apparently software developers actually think literally, oh, wow, that's fine.
We're good to go. They say we put the new version of the platform out. Everybody gave thumbs up and said we're good to go. And then 6 months later, they say our sales are going down.
Right.
Hey, what happened? Developers say, it's not our fault. We asked them and they said everything was good. But I like one of the words you used, though, that reimagination, right? Reimagine just the entire experience. And I think we maybe get caught in this vicious loop where it's almost like businesses are so focused on cost cutting. And we get into this whole discussion of can technology replace people as opposed to let's drive increased growth by leveraging the people we have already and then using the technology better. So I like what you're talking. Yeah.
William, one of the most interesting questions I was asked a couple of weeks ago was someone came in and they said, hey, I'm kind of worried. He said, with the advent of AI and all this technology and everything coming into play, I'm a little worried that what if one of our competitors or a new entrant came in and said, hey, I'm going to create a business that's going to compete with y'all and I'm going to do it AI first. What would that happen? What would that company look like? What would all their processes look like? Would a bunch of things that we do today just disappear because they're, overcome by events, right? That was a question. And I said, man, that's a really good ask because now you truly are reimagining it. You are reimagining you're starting this business from scratch or you're just in that beginning stage. And what would it look like if you were to kind of design out a new business of today using what you know now that you didn't know then? That thought exercise we've been asked, to do a lot for different people because they are, and it's not just concern about new entrants, but it's just falling behind. Are we really doing everything we can with it? And then at that point, once you start to reimagine your higher purpose, what you're organized for, then you can start thinking about, the people and technology and things like that. But I would argue it starts with first, reimagining what this is for, and then thinking about, systems, and then lastly, where do people kind of fit into that mix? I know it's more politically correct to talk about, people and systems and all that stuff. But I mean, the reality is you're building a business. You have a purpose. You have a set of functions you're doing. You have a reason why people choose you, not your competitor. There's something that kind of bonds your customers to you. What are those things? Really start thinking about that.
And it'd be interesting to A/B test this, right? Because your business model could say your value prop is the experience, and you may find out people actually appreciate when they walk through the doors, having somebody at the reception to greet them. So you may have a nice, that could be A. B could be it's automated. You go in, it's just a machine. You see nobody, and you move around and navigate. And you may find a lot of people don't like that detached experience. I find like it's when I enter a new building, I used to love just saying, hello, how's it going? Where is this office? and somebody would direct me. Sometimes I go in now, it's like there's no one in the lobby. There's no security guard, there's no receptionist, and it feels so impersonal. Maybe I prefer actually seeing this physical security guard, the receptionist, the person at the elevator. And I would actually prefer that and actually would spend my money with that. So I don't think it's automatically people will assume maybe the efficiency from the technology come more from the back end as opposed to the front end. Because I know you did the example of the restaurant. Because when I go into the restaurant, I want to see a physical menu to grab it. And when I see a QR code, it annoys me. I'm like, crap, I got to take my phone out, snap it, navigate. And then the waiter's sitting there, wait, what do you want? Hold on, I'm trying to, to get this thing to select. And it's kind of, let's call it, it's more friction in the process. So maybe there's more people involved than we think, even with even more technology. It's like you said, how do we reimagine the title we give the workers, what they do, and maybe we take some of the stress off their load by making some of the processes easier with the technology. So right. I think that A/B testing would be awesome. I guess in the market, we're going to get some real A/B testing, right? Like you said, AI first company versus a company that still have the people and they're just deploying them differently.
Right. Deploy those people differently and use it to really focus on that human experience and those human relationships, right? Because just like you said, it does weird me out to walk in offices. So we're a little old school. We don't have voicemail. We have a receptionist at the front.
Nice.
She pulls up there and, she'll get you coffee, water, whatever. We even have a little kitchen in the back where, sometimes we'll make, we'll make cookies or something like that. And of course we have the obligatory margarita machine too. So,
love it.
But I think it's really, our when we got our building and like I said, we're, it's all made in USA, right? So our employees are primarily here in the Dallas area in Arlington. And, we have an office out in Colorado. So we do have a couple of people out there, but even still our message is, welcome home, right? Yeah. We want people to, when they walk into our building, to feel like almost like welcome home. And so that to me was the purpose of having the building, making the type of upgrades that we made to the building to have the different things that we wanted to have in there so we can kind of create more of that, more of that space. And so that to me, I'll tell you this. One thing I love is our competitors, particularly ones offshore, right?
Yeah.
They love, AI and technology and everything that will kind of help them, take away from the ickiness of human interaction, right? They're really looking for that. And I'm like, cool, y'all do you. Go hard on technology, get rid of the people. That's awesome. Because the more you run that way, the more we're going to go human first. And you realize you don't need that many humans to create a good experience. You just need someone who understands their purpose is to create that human touch point, create that human experience. And then so we're going to kind of move the other things out of the way. So I'll go back to almost in a way like that, go back to that recovery room business that I talked about. The most important part is the experience that the patients have when they go and check into the recovery room. They're able to feel, it's a clean, comfortable room.
Yeah.
It meets all the licensing and other requirements. They're getting the type of care that they need. And then, they're getting the information about, the certain things they can't see. Hey, are my, wounds healing and my bandages getting changed often enough? Am I on the right, dosage and frequency of medication, whatever that is, right? Any kind of therapy they need. So, they are really focused on that. And so sometimes, instead of having, kind of onerous data collection, and you've seen this, right? Where like, nurses come in with the iPad and they're just focused more on inputting stuff and putting it in there. Sometimes stuff is just better to write down on paper. And now there's cool technology where you could just simply just take your phone, right? Like we have something we call the Ayoka capture engine, right? Or ACE, just could be like acronyms. But basically you just kind of point your phone and then you pull in that data. And so the whole idea would be, write it down, keep it on something a little old fashioned, but you see it. You see the data, you see the information. It's easy to record. You can focus on the patient. And then when you need to kind of bring that data back, you just take a picture and then it gets sucked into the database. And then you can do all your trend lines and your reporting and everything else like that. But that is really about that is really about that, kind of reshifting what the responsibility and the purposes are to focus on that human interaction.
And I think there's an opportunity here for businesses to, showcase what you just talked about, right? The improving the experience. Because sometimes you'll make the improvements on the back end. Some patients or customers may notice it, but maybe that's more part of your value prop and how you tell your story about we're going to give you more personal time because we're improving our processes. And by the way, if you want to kind of dig underneath the covers, why is our processes improving versus how we're using the technology? But they just need to attach that to your brand because really they don't want to know all the mechanics of it. If you use 10 people, 10 agentic AI bots, the consumer really doesn't care. They want to know how much does it cost for me. And the other side of business want to know the CFO's counting how much, what's my cost of doing business? And how much can I sell this for?
Right. What am I bringing into the marketplace that makes people want to choose me instead of someone else? Right. I mean, to me, like if you're an entrepreneur or you're just wherever you are, right? You're a leader in a business, right? You want your customers to keep choosing you. You want your customers to stay with you. You want to feel satisfied that you're serving them well and that you've got some sort of good outcomes for your customers. And so you kind of begin with that, and then everything else kind of lines up. I think, it's interesting. You said something really important, which is people, they don't care what's involved in constructing something. Right. So if you have some sort of an initiative or goal or something you want to do, maybe there's some sort of, you want to reform some aspect of your business operations, right? You really, it's nice to not have to think about the construction about what it is you're trying to do, because you never cared about it that much anyway. I mean, you did and you didn't, right? You cared about it because you knew it would have a material impact, and you knew if it was a very elaborate thing to construct, it's going to cost you, it's opportunity cost, right? It's missed opportunities. It is substandard service, and it might actually cost you more money too, because to actually do all that complex construction work is going to cost you something. So, but I think most people are, to your point, not super interested in kind of what goes into it. And with some of these newer technologies and newer tools, it gives us an opportunity to take a little bit of that attention away from the construction, the C, and then really think about, once I go live, what happens next? Yes. What does it mean to have the system? That's that management side of it. And I think a lot of times in technology, we use the word, maintenance and application maintenance and blah, blah, blah. But, maintenance, I prefer management because it feels a little bit more, proactive. It feels that you're somehow still connected back to your original purpose. And you're also looking to, what other value can we provide? Right. So, in the case of, the healthcare side, one of it, like I said, outcomes tracking is a topic people talk about a lot in healthcare. For our industrial services clients, they talk a lot about, production monitoring, right? And it just, it's a little more visibility. It's trying to understand how are we doing and how are we doing relative to what it is we set out to do in the first place, and what's that deviation between those two? And so I think the more under that management side, you continue to look for opportunities to say, okay, I've done one thing well for you today. Yeah. I hope I have earned some trust. There are some other things that I've seen here. Now we have an opportunity, to talk about some of these other things that we can do, or we have a chance to really induce someone. I mean, think how much trust you would need to have at Walmart if you could convince them to rethink this position of a cashier. Right. Tremendous amount of trust. And so you can't get there in, one iteration. You've got to really continue to build it. And to me, there's no better way to build that trust by a human connection, performing something small, getting an opportunity to do something a little bit more. And that's where you can eventually kind of get toward that. Now the lucky day
Yeah.
is when you get to that new entrant company that says, "Hey, I'm gonna take this over. I'm gonna rebuild from scratch. I'm gonna go AI first, and I'm gonna imagine a new company." Right? And that could be an entrepreneur. It could be, kind of a capital backed, entity or something like that. Like maybe they're venture capital backed or something, and they want to disrupt, as they say, the entrenched players.
What got me thinking here about maybe measuring success can be like a little different. Maybe it's the cashier can spend more time with you and you don't immediately notice it, but it's like it feels nice. So they kind of notice what you're buying. And like you said, making recommendations.
Right.
And then you say, what would inhibit the customer from saying, yeah, let me get that other thing? Oh, it's not at the front of the store. They would have to walk back. Well, maybe our processes, our workflow, our technology helps us move something that you forgot or something you should add to your cart. Easy to remove that friction. So you can find out that this cashier or whatever, we need to have a new branded name for this person, can maybe increase the basket by 10% based off what the conversation they're having with the person. And it's only possible because of the workflow, the way it's been optimized, the intelligent use of the technology, the ability to move things from maybe the back of the aisle all the way to the front very quickly, and get that into the person. That would be very valuable. And I think that would be good, similar to also like the doctor. All of a sudden, your patients notice my family practice doctor has more time to spend with me.
Right.
I said, hey, in the past, you rushed me through in 5 to 7 minutes. Now all of a sudden, I got a full 12 minutes. What's going on here? What's changed? Doc, you get and your doctor, I know you're not as stressed as you used to be. And you find out the doctor isn't as stressed as he used to be because of the optimizations they did in the background. Right. They can handle more patients. Maybe they're handling some people remotely as opposed to them coming in, which giving the people on site more time with the people who are coming in, and they optimize that. So you, almost like as a systems thinker, you're thinking, I can improve this in a way using this technology and my people together smarter. And I couldn't have done it before because, I had a lot of manual tasks, which AI is helping out with, maybe robot process automation, things like that. And all of a sudden you start to think like, well, if I'm going to decrease the cost of the code and more people can instruct machines to do what they want to do, that gives more people opportunity to improve the interface between themselves and the customer, which should, in theory, produce a better result, right? So customers should be waiting less, getting more face time, getting faster responses. They should notice a difference in all their interfaces, from medical care to legal services. That, hey, we can build out your house faster. It should be across all industries. But we have to think about this right? Like you have to have back to your commander intent. If it's just back to cost savings and that's only what a business focused on, the end user may never experience the benefits of what this new technology can help us do. And that's what I'm worried about. Is this going to be cost cutting, more profits? But you guys didn't reimagine your process or the workflow or the experience. And it's the opportunity to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And that's your brand, right? It enhances your brand. Like, man, I had a great conversation with my investment broker. He spent a lot of time on me, got me set on my plan over the next 10 years. And he had a lot of knowledge on what was going on in the market. And then you peel back the curtains, you see all the information that this broker has at their fingertips, the way they have predictive analytics in the background. It's a lot of things they can do that empower that broker sitting in front of you that you may not know how they managing to do it. But the people who design these systems in the back end, we understand what we're doing and how we're applying that technology. So I hope we take this as an advantage to really make a difference in people's lives, literally everything we interact with.
Yeah, I love it. And this is the excitement that we're in such an exciting era, because I think there's been a lot of things that have been lost along the way, in terms of what people's purpose is, what they're trying to do, what these different roles are. It's just been sort of lost. And now some of the reasons are, like you said, that pressure to, cut costs and all that, right? But some of it has also been complexity. It's like, hey, we initially thought about doing these things, but it was very complex, very cost intensive to do it. The construction, was higher, right? And so we just sort of dropped this idea and forgot about it. right? But I think people are really getting back into it. What I love about, AI, and my wife is the first one to really start showing me how to use the large language models successfully, right? So, what I loved is she showed me how it could traverse so many different things and bring it together. So now if I have a question, I'm looking over a contract, I can use AI to, just do file upload the contract, ask it a series of questions. I have certain things that are concerned with, like, hey, what's that, limitation of liability clause? What's our indemnification look like here? Dispute resolution, whatever, right? Whatever I might be concerned with in a contract, right? And then I can ask questions. It can kind of bring back things. And now I have a more educated conversation with our attorney. We did this actually very recently. I was kind of joking. So I have a patent in artificial intelligence. So it's called the mouse software. So if you go to the mousesoftware.com, you can kind of see the application. But what it does is it does kind of behavioral analysis of a mouse in a maze that's used in laboratory research. So one of our clients is UCLA. So they'll just, instead of having a human kind of observe pokes and sniffs of a mouse in a maze with different objects, we just do, just take a file upload, take a video, and our AI will figure out and tabulate that information. Anyway, so we're kind of broadening the patent to, to more than just mice. And, the patent office writes back, gives us a bunch of, papers to respond to. And so what I did is I just uploaded the patent office responses, and other, things that they brought up that they say, hey, are you similar to this or not? Use ChatGPT to help me write up kind of that, a matrix, a differentiation matrix in a response. And I joke with our IP attorney, our intellectual property attorney, that, hey, my general counsel, ChatGPT, gave me these answers. And the good news is it started me, and it allowed me to think of different things rather than being linear, right? Like, this is one of the downsides of ChatGPT. So I uploaded the document, told it to assess it, and it only looks at that, but it will not look outside of it. And I said, well, wait a second. It's not just a direct comparison of us versus them, but here's something novel. Here's something outside of any comparison. Here's why I think, we're different. Here's where we stand. And so to me, now I could focus more on not the things that are within. I can now think about things that are outside of what AI can traverse or what it can read or what you can send it. And that's going back to the earlier point of, if you're thinking outside of what you're doing, you think about, well, what are you doing now? What are humans doing now? They're doing transactional activities that could potentially be replaced by something else. And they're only doing these transactional activities for a higher reason. So you have a good experience at that restaurant because your server was able to understand, what type of food you like, what different people in your party were interested in, what brought you in the town. You have all of these different things that come from that human experience. And you come back because that experience was good. And the food could be, obviously the food is important, but I would argue that the experience is very important. And you would come back to a place with great service, a great experience, and, decent food.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because the portion about the using ChatGPT to help your thinking on that contract, something like a virtual assistant, and that's a low hanging fruit, right? It's not that we're going to hire some other people for 2 hours so you can bounce ideas off of,
right?
But it allows you to get a good starting point.
It's a starting point. It helps me frame my questions. It helps me be more educated in how I approach the attorney. And then we can focus on those complex issues that, you're saying, okay, I've gotten a starting point. Now I can dig into these topics more with the attorney. Or ChatGPT never covered things outside of it. I'm going to add these to it. And so what I did in my response back to the attorney to the intellectual property attorneys. I said, okay, here's what my general counsel said, bullet point, gave them a list of those in a matrix. And then below it, I said, hey, these are Eknauth points. And then boom, 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 right? And I said, so I think combine here some things that maybe collectively this can form our response back to the patent office. And from there, we were able to have a lot more fruitful discussion because we didn't have to start from scratch. And then we were able to actually be able to put together a response fairly quickly. So, and to me, I don't really, you could look at it and say, oh, well, you saved a few hours of attorney time. I mean, that's not really the point. The point is to have, an effective response. You really want to address the concerns or any questions that the patent office have had, and you want to do as effectively as you can. So the mission is effectiveness, just like the mission is getting people to come back to your restaurant.
Yes.
Or if you're a physician, your mission is to get patients better faster and to be able to traverse research that you trust, that you curate, and you put into your library and you ask the AI, okay, I need you to focus on my curated research that I trust, not be like WebMD and every diagnosis always ends up with you having cancer.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So, it'll, so you can, so now it's more complex. Now just if you kind of bear in mind, I just got a little more complex than just simple AI. Right.
Yeah.
And so let me argue with myself for a moment. I just said, hey, let's imagine the cost of construction going to zero.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when we actually have higher demands? What if we want to do things that we had long forgotten, that we kind of resurrect these ideas that we had forgotten because the construction was too high? And now we come back and say, well, we're not just going to push the easy button on ChatGPT and get an answer, but what we're going to do is we're going to use AI for these specific activities. We're going to use, a relational database and, queries to the database for these other things. We're going to combine it. We're going to use algorithms over here, but we're going to use AI for analytics over there. And so now it's a more complex, multi-layered solution. But the interesting thing is this, is we're actually producing a better solution than we could ever imagine before. Because one of the challenges, and I'll pick on the physician as an example, there's a lot of biologic stem cells and different treatment options that are available today that have been available in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so you just contrast to 10, 15 years ago, how many different biologics are available today versus just 10 years ago. And so then you ask the physicians, well, how do you keep up with all of this? And they say, well, the sales reps, many of them are either former physicians or the researchers, and they have a lot of information. Now, they're obviously biased because they have a family of products that they represent, but they have a lot of training and knowledge and research on the products that they represent. So what the physician does is they take the meeting, with this very educated salesperson, right? And it's a very technical meeting. And then they go, okay, I'll do this meeting on Tuesday. And then next week, Thursday, I'll have another meeting. And then the following week. And then in my head, I'm supposed to remember everything that all these different people said. I'm supposed to put it together somehow, remember it at that moment when I'm looking at a particular patient chart or a blood panel or some sort of other diagnostic test that I've ran. I've got to remember all of that and put it together. And so to me, that is the traversing side of AI, is that it will take that research paper from these different people, store it, traverse it, and then help you, pose questions or start your investigation. It isn't the destination, which is what people get really confused with AI, I think, is that they think, oh, I'm just going to push the button and it'll give me an answer. No. Oftentimes, it helps you better state your questions. Yeah. And your questions help you better surface your purpose, your intent, that commander's intent, that initial thing that brought you to what you're doing in the first place.
It's augmentation, right? Human intelligence, augment what we can do. And then your example of the doctor trying to remember all these different elements over a long period of time, that's not what humans are good at. Let's let the machines keep track of millions and millions and millions of transactions and data points so we can, with the humans, come up with these insights and actually apply them to the people who are like standing right in front of us, right? To make better decisions and choices. So it sounds like we got a lot out there that's exciting coming up. So if you're have a developer listening to you right now, can you just imagine the new role for developers? Maybe they do more on design side, more on systems thinking. Just talk a little bit about what's exciting coming for developers and them reimagining what their profession might look like in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot more in that surfacing commander's intent. It's going to be a lot more about, questioning techniques. It's going to be a lot about curiosity. It's really, I always say it starts with love. It's a little corny. Okay. It starts with love. If you build bricks, then I should fall in love with bricks. Because chances are you're the customer that loves to build bricks. You're doing it for a reason. And maybe it's just a family business you inherit, whatever the case is. But it begins with that. So to me, I would say the first thing you want to do as a software developer is learn how to love different businesses, learn how to love what people do, kind of be a little bit more humble and take yourself out of it and say, what is it that people are really kind of jazzed up about and why? So, and there's all sorts of terms for it in the software industry, call it being, a business analyst and, use case analysis and things like that, right? You can give it all those things, but it's really just about trying to have a bit more of a business acumen. And I think it will bring in people into this industry that have that natural curiosity about what people do for a living and why. So to me, the people who just want to take the requirements, that workforce is going to start to diminish. And those people are not going to get the interviews, they're not going to get the promotions, they're certainly not going to be able to surface commander's intent, and they're not going to be able to lead people who are doing the construction of things that are supposed to be in alignment with commander's intent. I think that we're going to be asking developers to imagine how do they start with AI. We have a number of people that are very experienced at our company, 10, 12, 15 years, right? They've been with us for a long time. And with the advent of this new technology, they have been hesitant because, they have a good track record producing solutions in the way that they know. Yeah. And so, but as they continue to leverage AI, they're starting to shift it, what I noticed, further and further upstream of their construction activities. And so now we do a lot of so-called technical demos, right? And, as the kids would call it, vibe programming, right? And the idea would be you are doing prototypes, but remember what the prototypes are for. You're quickly constructing prototypes using AI because you are trying to surface, is the user experience what the customer or the sponsor was seeking, right? Are we capturing the types of information and the flow in a way that would make someone's, operations actually better, not worse, right? So now you're really using it to discern commander's intent, right? You're doing it in combination with questioning techniques, but you're also doing it with vibe coding the tools you're quickly making. And then lastly is management. That last one is management, and that M means a little bit of continuing to discern, but it also means very much, like most of the people who are really good at construction do not want to do management, right? They do not want to maintain, manage, make minor enhancements, update, look at compliance, look at kind of minor, upgrades. That personality type is different. So I think that we're going to bring in much more customer service oriented people into this field. And in a way, it's almost democratizing, right? Because now we have a wider net of people who, I mean, look at retail, right? Like retail in the US is pretty good because you have people that kind of ask you how you're doing and help you shop and do stuff. And then you go to certain countries in Europe and they just ignore you. So in a way, we have a little bit more advanced customer service, right? And I think it's kind of baked into our culture. We we'll see some of that coming into that management side. So I think we'll see more room for humans in software. And it's going to take some of the people who went in there who thought that they would just want to construct and not be very business oriented or human focused. I think those people are going to start to diminish in the short run. When technology gets more complicated, when people start asking for more complicated things, I think you'll find that the people who can construct are going to be really good, right? It's actually going to be a different level of developer. It's not going to be so much of that, entry level activity. It's going to be a lot more complex sort of thinking. And just like it is today, back in the day, writing HTML, JavaScript, CSS was considered, that's like pretty hardcore. Now every kid learns this in grade school when they do a book report, right? So it will happen that some of the AI, some of the coding tools that today seem mystifying will become just pretty straightforward for a lot of people. And now that's the so-called entry-level part that goes away. And then now you've got the more sophisticated type of developer who is, trying to rapidly iterate prototypes, technical demos, things that will help discern why people are asking for what they're asking for.
Man, it's not like a pretty bright future here. And I think it's positive and upbeat, right? There's more opportunities than sometimes we may think when we hear all the news on the technology coming for us. It's more of how do we see what's available and then figure out our own professional development paths. So I'm pretty excited for folks in the technology field. And I think the future is going to be bright for a lot of people.
I think so. I really do. I think there are going to be certain things that will go away and change, and some people are getting stressed by that. I think a lot of the big tech companies overhired like crazy. So those people have to, and they were doing it defensively is what a lot of the tech companies said. Is we hired because, we felt like we needed to tell our shareholders that we're going to hire a bunch. So I think some of those people are going to go away because they overhired. I think some of these companies feel like they need to tell a story that AI is helping them get rid of these people. I think it's a story in some cases. So that, part of that noise has to kind of settle out. But I think when the dust settles and this industry starts, moving forward, instead of just leading with, the media leading with fear, then we say, okay, how are we going to reimagine these businesses? And that's the exciting part, because we haven't begun that yet. Everything has just been, replace X with Y. It's kind of like saying, like you mentioned marketing, A/B testing and things like that, right? That the implication was on the marketing side, right? But you think about the terms that we use in marketing. They actually went back to the olden days where you literally would have a newspaper and you would, copy paste. You would literally copy paste. You would do, just there's copy, there's images, whatever, right? Cut, all those terms came from that, impressions, everything, right? But when we finally stop replacing X with Y, and so we said, hey, this is no different than a newspaper. It just happens to be on a web page. Yeah. There's some value in that. But when we start doing something that we could never do on a newspaper, that could only be done on a web page, now we have something very different. And I think the first time people saw that was with, if you remember Ajax, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And the whole concept would be, you don't have to hit the F5 button to refresh your page. So if you had a dashboard with your business metrics, they're getting updated live real time. As you get new data, it automatically updates your page, right? So now, for the very first time, we are doing something that you couldn't do on a normal, like on a newspaper, right? Or a piece of paper. Because on a piece of paper, on a board, you can put your metrics and have someone type it down. But now, or before you'd have to hit F5. But now it's like automatically, like, Vue JavaScript is another example that does that, where it'll dynamically put new information on the page. So that's something you couldn't do before. It's not X replaced by Y. It's something new that couldn't be done before. And we haven't reached that point yet with AI. We haven't yet figured out what new could we do that hasn't been done before. These are all direct replacements.
Future's looking good. I'm excited to see what the next 2 to 5 years look like.
Cool. Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me on there and asking these questions. I think this is a fun place to be. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time today, man. It's been a lot of good insights from my viewers. And hey, until next time, man, I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
All right. It's been another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for joining another episode of the Smart IT Podcast, where we explore what's next for IT and disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk together. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. And for more Smart IT wisdom, check out my website at williamreed.info.